Test 9. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. You will hear a conversation between Austin and Derby. Here, Derby is inquiring about children's art and craft workshops. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. So Saturday has been written in the notes.
Good morning. Welcome to the Albert Museum. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. Good morning. I'm looking forward and equally interested in the children's workshops, and I'd like a little bit more information about it, please.
Do you mean the art and craft workshops for the children?
Yes, of course. One of my friends mentioned me about it. The children do painting and make models and so forth.
Yes, of course. Where to begin? First of all, as you probably know, they run every Saturday and Sunday.
Fine. And what about ages? Are these classes age-bound or divided into different levels?
Well, all ages from 5 upwards are most welcome, though we do ask that children below 8 years of age are accompanied by an adult. But after 8, only child is allowed to attend the workshop.
Fine, that wouldn't be a problem. What about the cost of these workshops?
Well, I think you'll find them very reasonable. It's $4.50 a child, with 60 pence off for 2 or more children from the same family.
Oh, yes, it's very reasonable. And are they held in the main museum? I mean, in the same museum?
Not exactly. They're nearby in a famous house.
Could you give me the full address? I don't know the area very well.
Yes, it's Victoria House.
Right.
And that's in Islip Street.
Could you spell that, please?
Yes, Islip Street.
Great.
And do I need to tell you that there's a security entrance? So you need to press the green button for someone to let you in. Don't press the red button, please. But don't worry, it's all clearly labeled.
Okay, and one more important question. Is parking available nearby? We're driving in from out of town.
Your best way is to leave your car at the back of the museum library. On a Saturday morning, there are plenty of spaces there. It's right next door to the museum.
And can I ask about booking places?
Yes, and I must tell you, you really should book by calling the education department here. Moreover, you can also book by registering on our website, i.e. www.albertmuseum.com.
If you don't mind, can I have the main museum number?
Sure. It's 800-972.
Great. I've got that.
Now you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
But I'm very happy to give you information about the next 2 workshops. On Saturday the 11th, there's Building Castles and Tombs, in which students learn the abilities of cutting and pasting.
Oh, sounds great.
This involves quite a bit of gum, so just make sure the kids are in old clothes, because while making these things, they are quite excited. And you know, sometimes they use it as play equipment and start playing with their clothes.
I know once. I don't mind getting mucky or dirty.
Exactly. And if possible, could you bring along bottle tops which the children might be able to use in the models? You know, as a decoration piece.
We'll certainly try to find some for you.
And the following week.
That'll be the 16th, won't it?
Yes, that's right. We are planning to make models for you, undersea water creatures. On that day, it's what we call World of Undersea. This is where they make scenes with fishes, underground caverns, octopuses, and so on.
It's that likely to get very dirty? Lots of paint splashes?
Not really. So we don't recommend any special clothes for that one. But if you could search out some silver paper to bring along to use in the sessions, it's shiny, it looks like water, that'd be great.
Yes, of course. We'll see what we can come up with. Well, thank you ever so much for all your help. The sessions sound really good, and I'll certainly book up for the next 2.
Lovely. Thanks very much for ringing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You are going to hear an extract from a broadcaster who is describing the significance of community radio in South Africa, Nepal, and Bolivia. First, look at questions 11 to 15. Listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
The important role that community radio plays in giving a voice to community issues is reflected in the increasing focus of donors on strengthening the sector. The deregulation of radio has resulted in the flourishing of empowered and critical voices in places such as South Africa, Nepal, and Bolivia. Furthermore, community radio plays a fundamental role in raising and addressing community health issues. As such, it is placed at the vanguard of efforts to address diseases such as HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. There is much discussion about the effort on local cultures of the increasingly globalized commercial media output with its well-tried and standard, if not banal, entertainment formats. But one thing is clear: they can never respond to the socioeconomic and development needs of the countries they reach, let alone those of marginalized communities within those countries. Hence, globalized media and community media do not compete. The former provides irrelevant entertainment, while the latter deals with local issues in the local languages and cultural context, relating to local problems and concerns, and aiming to help the community develop socially, culturally, and economically. Community radio is community-based and is run for the benefit of the community. It differs from local radio in as much as it is independent from larger state broadcasting networks, their content and perspective, and adheres to licensing requirements concerning community participation and service. The focus on local concerns is reflected in the typical mission statement of Radio at Your Door in Cape Town, South Africa, which reveals both the level of community ownership and commitment to local development. Community radio resonates to local concerns and needs. It broadcasts in local languages that are often ignored by public broadcasters, and is run by community members. It can be established to serve specific groups, as does Radio Mineiras, miners radio in Bolivia, or it can address specific themes, as does Radio Sagramatha, which has a focus on environmental sustainability.
Now you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20.
Community radio is recognized by many donors and developing country governments as a tool for advocacy, civil society strengthening, better governance, and accountability. As such, community radio can be thought of as a lever for the realization of poor people's rights. Typically, poor people are exposed to greater health risks than the non-poor by virtue of their relative poverty, disempowerment, and inability to realize their rights in a number of areas, such as workers' rights, rights to health services, and rights to education. Fundamental to each of these rights-related fields is that of the human right to freedom of information enshrined within the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights that states, "The emergence of the community radio sector in parts of Africa, Latin America, and Asia has enhanced poor people's rights to communication and can be thought of as an expression and indicator of broader political change and democratization." See Degron, 2001. From this perspective, we can think of community or citizen radio as a means through which communities are able to stake their right to a range of services and engage local and national government in dialogue about their own needs and constraints. From a democratizing perspective, community or citizen radio represents a key mechanism for monitoring community services such as health service delivery. Communities who are empowered with a voice are able to critically question issues such as health. The legalization of setting up a community radio station came after a long and voiced revolution from various grassroots organizations, individuals, and communities. Community radio is not just something which is feeding the people's mind with few people's choices, interests, and beliefs. Its inception goes back to the logic of providing voice to the voiceless, being a tool of development communication, acceptance of multiple voices, and of course giving space to multiple voices in order to remove the homogeneity of views, ideas, and beliefs. Secondly, its focus on covering micro-level issues, which are directly linked with people's lives, increases its importance. The participatory approach makes it different from the mainstream media, as it involves people to talk their concerns and listen to their voices on radio.
That is the end of Section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a discussion between Mr. David and an educated student called Albert about students' dissertation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25. Hello, Albert. How have you been getting on with your dissertation?
Fine. And I've been working hard on the various action points we agreed on our last discussion.
Do you want to talk me through what you've done?
Yeah, sure. Well, we agreed on the 3 main targets for me to aim for. The first one was to find out about the software related to data analysis.
Yes.
And what I decided to do was to look through catalogs, which are specializing in IT. That catalogs involves all new trends of IT.
That's a good idea. So, finally, what did you come up with?
I found the name of 2 promising ones.
Right.
But I also thought it'd be worthwhile talking to a lecturer.
All right. Who did you see?
Bennett Prince. Do you know her? She's in the computer center.
Yes, of course. She's the new head.
Yes. Well, she was very helpful.
Oh, that's good. Did she suggest anything in particular?
Yeah. She recommended software called Turbo, and I said I should book up for a couple of practice sessions using Turbo.
Great. I'm sure you'll find them useful.
And, of course, the second target was to draw up a survey checklist, which
Yes, you emailed it to me last week.
Have you had a chance to look?
Of course. I think it's good. Very much on the right lines. I'd say your first 2 sections are spot on. I wouldn't suggest that you change anything there, but in Section 3, you really do need to have questions on teaching experience.
Yeah. I was thinking that section looked a bit short.
Right.
And my third target was, do further reading on discipline.
Oh yes, I mentioned a couple of writers, didn't I?
Yes. Well, I got hold of the Jane Bennett, and I thought that was excellent. But I'm afraid I didn't get hold of the essays about teaching pedagogy. You know, the ones by Daniel Smith. The bookshop said it was out of print, and the library doesn't have a copy.
Oh right, and I'm afraid I've lent my copy to another student. What I suggest you do is try the library again. This time, apply for it through the service called Special Loans. Have you done that before? You're entitled to 6 books a year.
Yes, no problem. That's what I'll do.
So, lots of useful work done. Now, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Listen carefully and answer questions 27 to 30. So let's look at some new targets. We'll start by having a chat about your Chapter 1. I very much enjoyed reading it. Your written style is very clear, and you've included lots of interesting descriptions of education in your target area. I've just got a couple of suggestions for some additional work.
Of course. Could I just ask, what do you think I should call it?
Well, I'd go for something like context review. What do you think?
Well, short and to the point.
Exactly. Now, as regards specific areas to work on, I'd be quite interested to have a few more statistics about the schools in the different zones.
Oh, that wouldn't be a problem. I can get them from the internet.
Great, and although you did make a reference to quite a few different writers, I think you should aim to cite more works written later than 2000.
Okay, that's more difficult, but I can try. When do you want that done by?
Oh, it's not urgent. I should aim for the end of the term, but in the meantime, I think you should also be thinking about Chapter 2.
Should I be drafting it already?
No, but I think you should note down its main sections.
Yes. You know, I always find that the hardest part.
I always find it helpful to put some ideas on index cards.
Yeah.
And then you can sort them out and even lay them out on the floor. It's a real help.
Well, I'll certainly try it. When would the deadline be for that?
My advice would be to get it done before you embark upon the research. You can always change it later if you need to.
Okay. I'll get going on that then.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You are going to hear a speech of Michael Joseph, who is delivering the ways of removing speech anxiety. First, look at questions 31 to 35. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to deliver some important points related to speech anxiety. Most people feel nervous prior to giving a speech. This is human nature, and indeed, some degree of nerves is absolutely essential to remain alert and deliver the speech clearly. However, nerves do become a problem if they are debilitating in any way. Thankfully, there are practical ways to overcome this anxiety. First of all, silently and in advance of your speech, rationalize your thoughts. What are nerves? Nerves are simply a fight or flight response to danger. If you anticipate something you fear, adrenaline will pump around your body, causing you to feel anxiety. Although it may feel uncomfortable, nothing bad will happen to you. In fact, look at your nerves as a positive thing, as they will give you the energy to deliver your speech in an emotive, engaging, and passionate way. The more familiar you are with something, the less uncomfortable it makes you feel. Think about your first day at work, and think about how you feel at work now. The anxiety levels will have undoubtedly reduced the more familiar you are with your role, surroundings, colleagues, etc. Apply this principle to your speech. First of all, know the subject of your speech inside and out. Write the speech in the format it is to be delivered, in example, on PowerPoint or acetates. Prepare speaker notes that give you prompts on the title of the slide and its contents. If there are any names or statistics that you might find difficult to remember, include them on your speaker notes. These notes are not designed to be read from, but are designed to be held by the speaker and glanced at every so often to prompt the speaker and facilitate the flow of the presentation from beginning to end. They should be produced on small, discrete cards that can be handheld.
Now you have some time to look at questions 36 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 36 to 40.
Familiarize yourself with who the audience is going to be, how many people will be listening, and what their objectives are by listening to your speech. You must understand your target audience before writing the presentation so that you hit the correct tone and deliver it using the appropriate vocabulary. If it is fitting, circulate your presentation to a select few members of the audience ahead of the speech and ask for their feedback. Again, once this is done, if it is appropriate, circulate the speech to the audience beforehand so that they know what to expect and have an opportunity to prepare any questions in advance. Make sure you structure your speech in a logical way. You want your message to be delivered in as clear and concise a way as possible. In example, a beginning, introduction, middle, main body, and end, conclusion. The best way to remember this is to say what you are going to say it, and say it again. Always thank the audience for listening at the end of the speech and invite them to ask any questions. Then, keep calm. There's no need to panic. What is the worst that can happen? Even if you mix the presentation up, chances are the audience will not even notice. If your mind goes blank, take a sip of water. If it helps to imagine the audience have no clothes on, then use this visualization technique. Take deep breaths, talk slowly, make eye contact, and smile. Remember that everyone in the audience is there because they want to hear what you have to say.
This is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now you have 10 minutes to transfer your answers on your answer sheet. This is the end of Listening Test 9.